The cardiovascular system is the reason our heart beats and we are able to breathe every day. The cardiovascular system keeps us healthy and functioning correctly. For example, we are able to walk to the shops. The cardiovascular system also makes our muscles work by delivering oxygen to them. This is important in sporting performance as muscles create movement and complete activities. For example, shooting and football. There are 5 main functions of the cardiovascular system. These are all extremely important and keep the body running well and smoothly. These are nutrients delivery, removes waste products, transports oxygen, clotting, and thermoregulation. Thermoregulation. Thermoregulation is maintaining the right or regular temperature in your body. When you get too hot, your body does vasodilation, which is where you lose heat. In vasodilation, the blood vessels dilate and widen to increase blood flow, as there is less resistance. Therefore, the blood is closer to the skin surface and more blood is lost out the skin, cooling the body down. Whereas vasoconstriction happens when the body is too cold. Heat is maintained. The blood vessels constrict and tighten to restrict blood flow, so less blood gets to the skin surface, so less blood is lost out of the skin, keeping the body warm. Delivery of nutrients. Delivery of nutrients to the body is an important function. The nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream after food is digested in the stomach and intestines. The nutrients then diffuse from the bloodstream to the body cells via capillaries. These nutrients are sugar, fats, minerals, and amino acids, which are proteins. For example, sugar glucose is the body's main fuel for generating energy, and amino acids let the body make new cells. Blood clotting. Blood clotting stops the person bleeding too much and the loss of blood at a wound. Platelets and proteins in the plasma work together to stop bleeding as they create a clot over the wound. However, sometimes thrombosis can occur. This is where clots form inside of vessels even if there's no injury or natural dissolving. This can be very dangerous. Clots in veins can restrict blood flow. Transportation of oxygen. Transporting oxygen is probably the most important function. Every cell needs oxygen to work, but brain cells start to die if they don't have oxygen for 3 minutes. When we inhale, air enters the lungs and oxygen is absorbed through the air sacs and then into the bloodstream. Oxygen-rich blood is pumped into the arteriole via the heart. In the capillaries, oxygen diffuses out of the blood and into cells of the body's organs and tissues. At the same time, carbon dioxide, which is a waste product, is absorbed into the blood and transported to the lungs. When this oxygen-poor blood reaches the lungs, carbon dioxide diffuses through air sacs and is exhaled. Fighting infection. Another job of the cardiovascular system is to fight infections. White blood cells fight infections. They detect infections and envelop and kill them. When they detect and kill an infection, they create antibodies for that particular infection, which means that the immune system can act faster and is stronger to these infections once they've been in contact with them before. Removal of waste products. The circulatory system takes waste products, which are metabolic and toxins, and the circulatory system transports them to the liver, kidney, and lungs, where they are removed from the body. For example, carbon dioxide and urea are waste products. Systemic circulation. Blood circulates from the heart to the body, over our muscles we use, and then back to the heart. It supplies oxygen to all non-pulmonary tissues. Oxygenated blood leaves the left ventricle through the aorta and returns deoxygenated blood to the right atrium through the superior and inferior vena cava. It contains about 84% of total blood volume. Pulmonary circulation. Blood circulates from the heart to the lungs and back to the heart. Deoxygenated blood exits the right ventricle through the pulmonary trunk. It then branches into the left and right pulmonary arteries. After that, it enters the lungs and eventually the smallest arteriole feeds the capillary surrounding the alveoles. Oxygenated blood returns to the left atrium through the left and right, superior and inferior pulmonary veins. The role of the heart as a dual pump. The heart functions as a double ventricle. Blood moves from the body into the right atrium and then into the right ventricle, where it gets pumped into the lungs. Blood gets oxygenated in the lungs and moves into the left atrium and then into the left ventricle, where it gets pumped back into the body again. This means that the body gets richly oxygenated blood around it so people can breathe. It also helps to remove carbon dioxide. In sport, they will need richly oxygenated blood to the muscles so they can keep working and not fatigue easy. For example, Mo Farah in the 10,000 meters will need lots of richly oxygenated blood so that he can last the long race. The left and right side of the heart is separated by a septum, which separates oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Structure of the heart. The heart is a four-chambered organ, split into four chambers. It has two atria and two ventricles. The atria receives blood whilst the ventricles pump blood. It is made up of the endocardium, epicardium, pericardium, atria, bicuspid valve, tricuspid valve, chordae tendineae, papillary muscles, aortic valve, and pulmonary valve. The endocardium. The endocardium is the membrane that lines the inner heart. It also is all over the heart valves, which gives it a smooth surface. Therefore, no blood cells are able to stick to it when they pass through the heart. The Purkinje fibers are located in the endocardium, and they are specialized muscle cells, and they convey electrical impulses which make the heart contract. Collagen fibers give the endocardium its elasticity. Epicardium. The epicardium is the outside layer of the heart wall. It is made up of loose connective tissue, which includes elastic fibers. It forms the inside layer of the pericardium. The job of the epicardium is to protect the inner heart layers and help to produce pericardial fluid. This fluid fills the pericardial cavity and it stops friction between pericardial membranes. The coronary muscles give the heart wall blood and it is located in the epicardium. Pericardium. The pericardium is all around the heart and the proximal ends of the aorta, vena cava and pulmonary artery, and it is a fluid-filled sac. The functions of the pericardium are to keep the heart contained in the chest cavity, prevent the heart from overexpanding when blood volume increases, and it also limits heart motion. Three layers of pericardial membranes are the fibrous pericardium, parietal pericardium, and the visceral pericardium. Pericardial cavity is between the visceral pericardium and parietal pericardium. The cavity is filled with pericardial fluid, which reduces friction between the pericardial membranes. Tricuspid valve. The tricuspid valve is the valve between the right atrium and right ventricle. When the valve opens, blood is pumped from the right atrium into the right ventricle. Once the blood has pumped through, the valve will snap shut so that there is no backflow at all. It is called the tricuspid valve because it has two flaps or cusps. Bicuspid valve. This is the other valve in between the left atrium and the left ventricle. It lets blood flow in one direction only. Oxygenated blood flows through the bicuspid valve from the atrium to the ventricle. After this, the valve snaps shut to stop backflow, just like the tricuspid valve. Instead of three flaps, it has two, hence the name bicuspid. Aortic valve. The aortic valve is located between the aorta and the left ventricle. The lower left chamber is closed off by the aortic valve. It holds oxygenated blood before it is pumped to the body. The aortic valve also lets blood leave the heart by opening and goes from the left ventricle to the aorta and then finally onto the body. The pulmonary valve. The pulmonary valve shuts off the lower right ventricle by snapping shut. It lets blood be pumped from the heart to the lungs through the pulmonary artery by opening, and at the lungs it receives oxygen. It is located between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. Chordae tendineae. The chordae tendineae are a group of strands in the heart that are tough and tendinous. They are sometimes described as heartstrings because they look like small pieces of strings in the heart. The chordae tendineae hold the atrioventricular valves or AV valves in place during this the heart pumps blood. The atria. The atria are the upper two heart chambers, and the interatrial septum separates the left and right atrium. The atria receives blood returning to the heart from the body, and then the ventricles pump blood from the heart to the body. Papillary muscles. Papillary muscles are the muscles in the ventricles of the heart. They are attached to the cusps or flaps of the AV valves or atrioventricular valves via the chordae tendineae. The papillary muscles contract to stop inversion or prolapse of the valves during ventricular systole. The cardiac cycle. First, the atria receives blood. Then the right and left atria fills with blood from the inferior and superior vena cava via the pulmonary vein and the vena cava. The AV valves or atrioventricular valves snap shut to stop blood flowing backwards. As more blood fills up the atria, pressure builds up more and more. This image shows diastole. The other image shows atrial diastole. The blue side represents deoxygenated blood and the red is oxygenated blood. Ventricular diastole, passive filling. The pressure which has built up in the atrial diastole phase forces the AV valves or atrioventricular valves open. This lets some of the blood into the ventricles, 70%. And the first diagram on the image shows ventricular diastole and the blood moving into the ventricles. This is passive filling.